Gunfire ripped through the air. Pablo Emilio Escobar Gaviria was born on December 1, 1949 in Rio Negro, Colombia. Raised in the nearby town of Medellin, he came from a humble background. His father was a farmer and his mother was a schoolteacher. From an early age, Escobar displayed an ambitious and rebellious nature. He reportedly began his criminal career by stealing tombstones, sanding them down, and reselling them. He later moved on to car theft, contraband smuggling, and fraud before eventually becoming involved in the lucrative cocaine trade that would make him one of the richest and most feared men in the world. Pablo Escobar, the most notorious drug lord the world had ever seen, sprinted across a Medellin rooftop. His pursuers were close. He could hear their shouts, feel their presence like wolves on the hunt. Escobar, once untouchable, was now trapped. His empire of cocaine, built on money, blood, and terror, was crumbling around him. This rooftop, a symbol of his rise to power, might now become his tomb. He ducked behind a water tower, the metal hot from the midday sun. His breaths came in ragged gasps. Years of luxury and power hadn't prepared him for this, for the raw fear that now pulsed through his veins. Escobar, the man who had stared down governments and laughed at death, was afraid. Pablo Escobar was born into poverty in Medellin, Colombia. By the 1970s, cocaine demand in the United States was soaring, and Escobar saw an opportunity to capitalize on it. Partnering with other traffickers, he helped establish the Medellin cartel, which would dominate the global cocaine trade for over a decade. Escobar's organization smuggled vast quantities of cocaine into the United States, reportedly supplying up to 80% of the cocaine consumed there. At the height of his power, he was earning an estimated $420 million per week. Life in the slums was harsh. Opportunity was scarce. Young Pablo, ambitious and cunning, saw a way out. He started small, a petty thief, his eyes always on the prize: wealth, power, respect. He learned the streets, their codes and their cruelty. He partnered with local criminals, graduated to car theft, then smuggling. Each step took him further from the poverty he loathed, closer to the world he craved. He was ruthless, ambitious, and driven by an insatiable hunger for more. The 1970s saw the rise of cocaine. Escobar's operation was meticulous. He controlled every step of the supply chain, from coca cultivation in South America to smuggling routes and distribution networks in the US and Europe. His cartel used submarines, private jets, hidden compartments in commercial flights, and even mules to transport the drug. The profits were astronomical, and Escobar became one of the richest men in the world, amassing a fortune estimated at $30 billion by the late 1980s. The sheer volume of cash generated was so immense that he reportedly spent $2,500 per month just on rubber bands to bundle the money. He also faced storage issues, often burying large amounts of money in fields and warehouses, with billions believed to have been lost or destroyed over time. Escobar, with his street smarts and ambition, seized the opportunity. He recognized the drug's potential, its ability to make men rich and nations tremble. He united a network of traffickers, forming the infamous Medellin cartel. Escobar's cartel controlled every step of the cocaine trade, from production in Colombian jungles to smuggling routes into the United States, flooding the streets with their product. Money poured in, unimaginable wealth that transformed Escobar from a street hustler into a powerful kingpin. He became El Patron, the boss, feared and revered. Escobar's ingenuity was as chilling as it was effective. Despite his violent tactics, Escobar cultivated an image of a benevolent benefactor. In Medellin, he built housing projects, hospitals, and schools for the poor. He sponsored local soccer teams and funded public works projects. This earned him the adoration of many lower-class Colombians who saw him as a modern-day Robin Hood. His philanthropic efforts were, however, a strategic move to gain public support and protection. He even constructed entire neighborhoods, such as Barrio Pablo Escobar, to house thousands of the city's most impoverished residents. He built clandestine labs in the Colombian jungle, overseen by skilled chemists who transformed coca leaves into pure cocaine. His smuggling network was vast and sophisticated. He used planes, boats, even submarines to move his product, outsmarting law enforcement at every turn. He bribed officials, threatened judges, and silenced anyone who dared to stand in his way. His ruthlessness knew no bounds. He was a master manipulator, a logistical genius, who turned the cocaine trade into a multi-billion-dollar enterprise. Escobar's power grew unchecked. While Escobar enjoyed the loyalty of many, his reign was marked by extreme violence. He ordered the assassinations of judges, journalists, politicians, and anyone who stood in his way. He was responsible for the deaths of thousands, including government officials and innocent civilians caught in the crossfire. His infamous strategy of plata o plomo, silver or lead, meant that officials either accepted his bribes or faced assassination. He became a law unto himself. He silenced journalists who dared to write about him, assassinated politicians who opposed him, and terrorized the Colombian people. His message was clear: plata o plomo, silver or lead, accept my bribe or face my bullets. Bombs exploded in city streets, killing innocent civilians. Politicians lived in fear. The Colombian justice system seemed powerless to stop him. Escobar, fueled by cocaine profits and his own twisted ambition, had plunged Colombia into an abyss of violence and fear. The world took notice. In 1989, his cartel was behind the bombing of Avianca Flight 203, killing 107 people, in an attempt to assassinate a presidential candidate. He also orchestrated the bombing of the Colombian security agency DAS headquarters, leaving nearly 70 dead and hundreds injured. His cartel unleashed a campaign of terror, employing sicarios, hitmen, to eliminate his enemies and conducting open warfare against the Colombian state. The violence escalated to such an extent that entire neighborhoods in Medellin became battlegrounds, and government officials lived in constant fear. The United States, facing a cocaine epidemic fueled by Escobar's cartel, joined forces with the Colombian government. A massive manhunt began. Special forces soldiers, DEA agents, and Colombian police officers were tasked with bringing down the elusive kingpin. But Escobar was always one step ahead. He had informants everywhere, eyes and ears on the streets. He used his vast wealth to buy loyalty and silence. He was a phantom, appearing and disappearing at will, always managing to evade the net closing in around him. The pressure mounted. Escobar's power eventually made him a target of both the Colombian and U.S. governments. After years of trying to evade capture, he negotiated his own surrender in 1991, under the condition that he would be housed in his own self-built prison, La Catedral. The so-called prison was more of a luxury resort, complete with a casino, nightclub, and spa. It also featured a soccer field, a waterfall, and lavish accommodations for his associates. However, when the government attempted to move him to a real prison in 1992, he escaped. Escobar, once seemingly invincible, was now on the run. His family was constantly on the move, hiding from authorities. The violence he had unleashed consumed his own organization, turning allies into enemies. On December 2, 1993, trapped and desperate, Pablo Escobar made a fatal mistake. While talking to his son on a tapped phone line, he revealed his location. Colombian National Police stormed the building. Gunfire erupted. When the smoke cleared, Pablo Escobar, the man who had terrorized a nation, lay dead on a Medellin rooftop. Pablo Escobar's death marked the end of an era. A massive manhunt ensued, with Colombian authorities receiving assistance from the US DEA and a vigilante group known as Los Pepes, composed of former cartel rivals and paramilitary groups seeking revenge. After 16 months on the run, Escobar was finally located in Medellin on December 2, 1993. He was killed in a shootout with Colombian forces, though some speculate he took his own life to avoid capture. His death marked the end of an era of unparalleled cartel violence but did little to curb the global drug trade. The Medellin cartel, weakened by infighting and pressure from law enforcement, crumbled. But the scars he left on Colombia run deep. Thousands of innocent people dead, a nation traumatized by violence, the corrosive legacy of drug trafficking still casting a shadow. Yet Escobar's story, in a twisted irony, has become a cultural phenomenon. Books, movies, and TV shows depict his life, often glamorizing his violence and wealth. It's a reminder of the complex relationship between crime, media, and public fascination. Pablo Escobar's rise and fall offer stark lessons. Even in death, Escobar's legacy continues to haunt Colombia. While his cartel was dismantled, the drug trade persisted, with rival organizations filling the void. His life has been immortalized in books, films, and TV series, cementing his status as one of history's most notorious criminals. To some, he remains a villain who terrorized Colombia. To others, he is a folk hero who defied the establishment. Regardless, his story remains a cautionary tale about the devastating power of crime, corruption, and ambition. His former estates, including the infamous Hacienda Napoles, have been transformed into tourist attractions, drawing visitors curious about the man who once ruled a drug empire from the shadows. His influence, even in death, continues to shape Colombia's history and cultural landscape. The allure of easy money, the devastating impact of drug trafficking, the human cost of violence. His story underscores the need for strong institutions, international cooperation, and unwavering commitment in the fight against drug trafficking. The war on drugs is far from over. New cartels have emerged. The demand for narcotics continues. But by understanding the factors that allowed a figure like Escobar to rise, we can better equip ourselves to prevent history from repeating itself. The fight against narco-terrorism requires a multifaceted approach, one that addresses not just supply and demand, but also the social and economic conditions that breed criminality.